Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, joining me here for yet another special 2025 NFL Draft show, a one and the only Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, these later nights, 100-some picks, Roger Goodell saying the draft's got to move a little bit faster. I think we agree. It's also a lot easier when they're not printing jerseys, having people come on the stage and handing them hats where they look in the mirror and everything. So it's,
what does Lieutenant Murtaugh say? I'm too old for this crap.
More like he's like not something else. For our Lethal Weapon fans, we're starting to get dated there now. It used to be a very known reference. So we're here with the Steelers pretty much standing pat at this point. Third round, just pick 83, and everybody says it's got to be, taking Shadeur Sanders here or a quarterback, and no, they didn't. And you and I are on, we've got this like, is it a symbiosis, like the Venom thing where he like latches on and we've got the same brain working together, or what? Because I know we didn't necessarily mock Kaleb Johnson to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we had a pretty good idea about defensive line and running back, and you were like so vehemently opposed about using either of the two picks that they had or trading back in for a quarterback. We're on the pulse, buddy. You got to be feeling good about it.
Yeah, I feel like I can't complain at all, right? I mean, I wanted a running back with the next picks. I'll tell you, I'm surprised that nothing else happened, right? That they didn't manage to get back in the second round, that they didn't, move somebody, not mentioning who, or do something. But that doesn't mean they didn't try, right? That doesn't mean they didn't try. And so, what that really tells you is, okay, here's the offense is going to be set. You're going to go to war with the guys you've got at this point. I don't see them. This was the night, if they were going to trade Pickens, this was the night they were going to do it. I don't see them making that move at this point now at all. Because you're not going to trade him for less than a second round pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't either. We talked about, well, how about both of the Iowa State wide receivers going to the Houston Texans? That's crazy. And I was talking about, I was already saying earlier, I was like, you know what? I'm like, I read about Noel, I read about Higgins. I'm like, I get them both confused. You want to get even more confused, have them both go to the same team. So I'm kind of happy for that. It's kind of like last year where it was like everybody was named Wilson. It was like Wilson, Peyton Wilson, Russell Wilson, Roman Wilson, too many Wilsons in the neighborhood. But yeah, the Steelers didn't move back into the second round, pal. And I'm okay with that. You got Derrick Metcalf. Derrick Metcalf is your second round pick, essentially. And you saw some of the moves that the other teams made or didn't make in day two of the draft here. A lot of picks that there wasn't anything I'm like highly jealous of, to be completely honest. That would even be like the Cleveland Browns, who started the day just going around the division a little bit. Okay, you got Carson Schweichinger, the UCLA linebacker. That's who they went with at 33. My buddy was pretty pissed off, man, because Nick Amanawari sitting right there. He said, hey, we need, some secondary help, need a safety. You throw another dude out there like that. And that's trouble. I'm like looking at that like, oh my goodness, they just went and got Mason Graham and they're making the moves that they made and get the extra draft picks. And Amanawari goes 2 picks later to Seahawks before the Browns could get back on the clock. And then Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. And I'm like, okay. I don't even know that he's the better of the two Ohio State running backs. We're both Buckeyes guys. I really wanted Travion Henderson, but then 2 picks later, he's gone to the New England Patriots. But, I'm not to go kind of, how I am with the Cleveland Browns. Decent draft so far. I'm not going to be, throw too much shade at them. It's kind of hard to miss too much when you have picks 33 and 36 overall to pair with your first rounders. So, the other, I guess, surprise is that Tyler Shugg goes to the Saints, 40th overall. And I was like, whoa. And there's a guy with some injury history, but he's slinging the ball around, didn't throw a lot of interceptions, which is kind of the, they should have fine print below it, because it was like, oh, hasn't thrown more than 5 interceptions in, however many college seasons, 4 or 5 college seasons. But maybe it was 6 interceptions. But there was also like 1 or 2 of those seasons where he only played like a handful of games to begin with. So he wasn't always available. And I guess, that's kind of one of those red flags when you have a lot of the traits, but you have an injury history, people are going to avoid you. And we saw that happen with several other players like Will Johnson. Another thing that was surfacing.
Dropped way down, yeah.
Yeah, something surfacing. So there's some noise out there. You were talking about George Pickens. I'll bring that up in a second, because there was something on the show we did earlier today about the first round and Derrick Harmon. 2 things that we didn't mention. So one, this came out probably around the time that we just dropped the show, right? And they were talking, somebody said that he had an MRI, he had like a shoulder issue. It's going to require, it's like a torn labrum, and his season's in jeopardy. And something about that, just like, I was just like, that's just a bunch of BS, because I don't think the Steelers or anybody gets anywhere near him. They had him in for a visit. He had to have passed all of his medicals, physicals, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Also speaking on Harmon, his mother passing away, but being there, in the hospital, prayers out to him, but she hung in there and was there long enough, bittersweet, to, realize her son's dream of making it to the National Football League and making it as a 1st round pick. So, obviously, prayers out to him. That's not an easy situation. It's both the happiest and probably saddest time of his life simultaneously. So, very tough, very tough. It's even tough to talk about that. I get a little choked up over here. So, the other one, Brian, is somebody out there. I don't know who it was, but it's one of these NFL insiders. George Pickens not following the Steelers on Instagram anymore. And that was a headline like last October or something, when everyone looked at it then, and Justin Fields was being replaced by Russell Wilson, and they thought he was protesting and, wanted free me from Pittsburgh or whatever. I don't know that he's ever followed the Pittsburgh Steelers. So everyone with the smoke around George Pickens being traded, that was just nonsense to me. And, obviously he's in the last year of his deal. He's going to probably want paid. We're probably going to have a little bit of a circus around that if he decides to sit out of camp or hold in or whatever the players are going to do these days. And you never know. Maybe he'll get a bag, because they're not paying anybody right now at the quarterback position. So they have money to spread around for the next few seasons. So that was another one I wanted to get out there, because we were talking earlier, forgot to mention it.
Right, and I don't agree with you on that. I do think they shopped Pickens in the sense of they took
possibly
calls.
Yeah,
I absolutely believe that if they'd gotten value, he'd have been shipped off. But that's the thing, is I don't think they could get the value they wanted, and they had to do it on a day like today, where you find somebody who was going to be wide receiver desperate and wanted to trade for Pickens. Apparently, nobody did, because remember we talked about it earlier, where the answer was, is there anybody better than George Pickens that was left in the draft? And we didn't think the answer was yes. So, if you have that opportunity, it's kind of like the Steelers getting DK Metcalf for a 2nd round pick. Mm-hmm. If they could have gotten it back, I think they would have gotten it back. But what I think happened is they got calls, and they got lowball calls, and they did not get the value that they expected to get, and it wasn't worth doing. So, but I do think that there was real potential for him to be gone.
Yeah, and I wouldn't argue that. I'm sure that I'm sure they call on several players. I'm sure there's been calls on TJ Watt too, to be completely honest. I mean,
I'm sure there have, but everybody's, again, the same problem. They're not going to get the value you expect to get out of TJ Watt. And I played this whole hypothetical game with a friend of mine, which was, could TJ be shopped? Could TJ be traded? Well, anybody can be traded. Is it possible? If some team offered you 2 first-round picks for TJ Watt at this stage in his career, with his contract expiring or running up, and you're on the step of where you now have to pay him probably an exorbitant amount of money because of where the market is going. Maybe you could have done it, but nobody's going to do that. That's like, to do it, it would have to be ridiculous. I mean, and the Steelers have tradition, right? The Steelers like to protect. They like guys who are one jersey guys, right? That this is the, Cam, is going to be one of those guys. Troy was one of those guys. Ben was one of those, they only played for the Steelers. That's the only place they ever played. They don't want TJ to go anywhere else. But, who knows? I don't think there was any serious consideration of that.
No. And you don't want to make any position worse by trading that away. So, yeah, Brian, it would have to be something maybe ridiculous, as you said, maybe like the Travis Hunter trade. Specifically, maybe even not for George Pickens, but
have to be better than that.
Maybe, yeah, better than that when it comes to TJ Watt. But for Pickens, again, you're not going to make one position weaker for the sake. Then who's your other starting wide receivers? Who's your other guy opposite Metcalf? Then you just have the same problems that you had before. So I know a lot of people are sitting there thinking, wondering when's the quarterback going to come, and they looked at everybody that's pretty much in this draft. I mean, Jalen Milroe went to the Seattle Seahawks. So somebody, I think, before the draft is over. But Art Rooney, how about Art Rooney coming out on Steelers Nation Radio before we get to the Kaleb Johnson selection here and telling everyone basically he expects Aaron Rodgers to sign and anybody they draft would be sitting for a year. And it's like, well, of course they're going to sit for a year because you're talking about getting somebody that's outside of like the top 100 picks. So it's kind of the Captain Obvious move there, if anything. You know what? I'm going to have to look at this, but I think even Mason Rudolph might have been within the top 100. If I'm not mistaken. So he wasn't going to start.
Because remember, I said that was a wasted pick when we did it too.
Yeah, of course you did. He was 76.
I was on Ben's side there.
76. Hey, it was somebody, and that was a draft where 5 people went in the first round. Much, what should have been a brighter, or looked to at least appeared to be brighter prospects at the time. And I know Darnold's turning it around, Mayfield's turning it around, Rosen's been turning it to other teams. Every time he wakes up on the other side of a pillow, he doesn't know where he's at, what city he might be playing in. But you got Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, 2 of the guys that were neck and neck for MVP in there. So it's like maybe somebody misscouted or whatever. But if, these teams, even Milroe going late and Sanders slide and everything like that, there's 32 teams in the league that are pretty much making these same kind of decisions. Do they get it wrong sometimes? Absolutely. But it's kind of hard to be wrong that many times over. So in that aspect, I mean, could the Steelers be wrong? Sure. But what helps now? And we said defensive line. That's what we said in the earlier. And Derrick Harmon, and you got an almost 36-year-old, soon to be 36 in May, Cameron Hayward. We know he's a leader of the team, captain, all-time Steelers great. I mean, he surpassed James Harrison's sack record, and that is just so quietly kind of swept under the rug when it comes to longevity. So you needed like another pick in order to help your team right now, and I think that the Steelers were going there and not being, quarterback desperate, maybe. I mean, some of the teams that are taking the quarterbacks, Seahawks, is that a real insurance policy behind Sam Darnold? I don't know. And then Dylan Gabriel to the Cleveland Browns. What a room that's going to be. That's going to be fun with what? Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco? Ooh.
Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and, the massage therapist guy.
Oh, I almost completely forgot about him because all bets are off. I mean, I'm going to be completely serious. I've written Watson off, even though he hasn't written himself off and said he's going to come back better than ever or whatever be the case in 2025. I don't know that he's going to be back in 2025. I think that ship sailed. They're just going to keep paying the bills, mailing out his checks. But the quarterback room that really gets me, though, is like Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and Jackson Dart. It's an interesting room with some guys that have some like overlap in skills, right? I remember when Rooney talking about this stuff just most recently about where they're drafting and Aaron Rodgers and stuff. The one thing that really stuck with me, Brian, was in the offseason about 2 months ago, he had said he would like the quarterback room to have quarterbacks that are of similar style. And I mean, Mason Rudolph doesn't really run a whole lot. Aaron Rodgers probably isn't capable of running a whole lot if he ends up coming aboard. So you probably shouldn't expect a very mobile quarterback to, be put into this mix. So not surprised.
Sure doesn't look that way.
No, and I'm not surprised the Steelers went somewhere else. Let's talk about the pick and maybe some direction they could go with the rest of the draft, because there's not a whole lot of picks left. Obviously, a quarterback would still be ideal for the Steelers to get, but they don't have. There's not a whole lot of picks left for them. They've got 4th rounder, they got 123, 5th rounder 156, 6th rounder 185, and then 7th round 229, which is almost at the complete bottom. I'm gonna have to look and see how many picks there were overall in this draft. Who's Mr. Irrelevant this year? It's not 229, it's 257.
Will it be Shadeur Sanders?
Mr. Irrelevant. He's already the Mr. Irrelevant regardless of where he goes because of the slide that he's been in.
The consensus experts draft Knicks. That's the number 2 quarterback. Guess what? NFL GMs went, no, you're dumb and you're wrong.
Daniel Jeremiah had him 20th overall. I'm sure Mel Kiper, Mel Kiper once said that Jimmy Clausen, he was going to bet his job on that guy being having a Hall of Fame career in the National Football League, and that didn't materialize. So, well, with enough of we're mocking the drafts as the actual draft unfolds still.
Yes.
But I said the same thing. Some people are saying the Sanders thing, it's hate that some people are rooting for him to slide or fall or wherever it is. And for me, it's just an exercise of, the draft Twitter, where they have 100 guys with a 1st round grade, and you could only have 32 players selected in the 1st round. And you have this crap every year. So I'll give you an example. Darius Alexander, it was where was he going to go? I was mocking him. I think I put him in one of my mocks 3rd round, and he went at the top of the 3rd round. So it was almost you get a sense or a feel for some of it. I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room, but there's some people who kind of ignore if somebody's from the MAC, from Toledo, not playing against Big Ten or SEC, or 25 years old as a rookie coming into the National Football League. Those are all real things. A lot of the guys with the injury history, like Will Johnson, for example, finally going to the Cardinals. So Kaleb Johnson, no relation. I'm intrigued. I will say that much, because we were texting back and forth. We were taking a look at the pre-draft visitors that were still on the board after Travion Henderson went, and you saw RJ Harvey. He ended up going to Denver, the Denver Broncos. And I got a good friend that's a Broncos fan, and he goes, "Oh man, I really wanted the guy from Iowa." And I said, well, I hope that he ends up landing in Pittsburgh, because I think he would be a pretty good fit. I actually thought that Dylan Sampson from Tennessee might have been on their radar too. But Harvey was, and there was still, we said Jaden Blue out of Texas, maybe a little bit later on, Ollie Gordon, Oklahoma State. They obviously had Omarion Hampton and Travion Henderson, and they had about 8 running backs that were in for pre-draft visits. So Johnson fits that bill. Another Big Ten, big-time player, and boy, did he pop off the page last year. 240 carries for 1,537 yards, 21 rushing touchdowns, and added about another nearly 200 yards receiving with 2 receiving touchdowns. He's a load to bring down. He's a nice north-south runner, and guess what? Steelers needed somebody that could get north and south and get that, short, 3rd and short or 4th and 1 type of distance.
Yeah, I'm just, look, the way the draft has gone so far, to me, fits exactly with my evil plans, right? Build positions of need, stock up on quality players, and then make some hay next year. And this is exactly what I would have wanted for them to do. Draft it on the line, fill out the running back position. Don't do something dumb, and don't expend capital that you don't need to expend. So right now it's falling right the way you'd want it. And things, there's still plenty of guys on the board. If they want to pick a developmental quarterback, they're going to be able to pick a developmental quarterback. If they want to add some other pieces for depth, they're going to be able to. So it's going exactly as I had planned.
Excellent, Brian.
Excellent.
Excellent. Johnson. Okay, you get to see the guy a little bit more, like, because we're watching some Big Ten football. Tina's going to be very happy. Our managing editor here, who big Iowa fan. So she was not expecting him to be around at 83. We were texting a little bit, and I said, I think that's the guy. 6 foot even, 225. Pro Football Focus. They gave him. He's just a shy of 22 years of age. They had a lot of good. They had a lot of good things to say about him other than his pass protection. They said it's what lowered a lot of his grades because they said he's hit a home run, an impressive 97.9 PFF game athleticism score in 2024. I mean, they don't give many grades up in the 90s for a lot of things, right? And when you look at all of his body of work, he doesn't have like the load of carries of like a Jonathan Taylor, for example, when he came out of college. So coming out of Wisconsin, maybe he won't have the same kind of like wear and tear. Won't be expected to necessarily carry the entire load either as a 3rd round pick, but I think he's going to get a nice split with Jaylen Warren. You don't have to worry about the pass protection right now because he's got one of the best in the game that just pops linebackers constantly to try and come in. So Jaylen Warren's like a Mighty Mouse. He doesn't realize he's the size he is when he's up against some of these linebackers and defensive linemen that are on the opposition. So I'm not as concerned unless Warren were to go down. Now I have less concerns. This fills depth. This fills a nice role. He was tied 19th for missed tackles forced with 66. He had 1,060 yards after contact, which was 6th according to Pro Football Focus. He was 3rd in the nation with carries of 15 plus yards. That was did I say 3rd? He had 28 of those runs. He was 3rd overall in the nation. Sorry if I said that incorrectly. Only 2 drops. He didn't have a whole lot again when it comes to in the passing game, but they have his elusive rating at a 131.5. Very much so elite traits. His rushing grades, his gap grades, his zone grades, his yards after contact, 4.42. All of these grades from Pro Football Focus are they speak to an elite level college back. Kind of odd that he slid where he slid because I definitely liked him over some of the guys I was talking about, like Sampson and Harvey, and I just maybe not Henderson. So especially, you got guys like Buckeyes are in the, the Heisman conversation, whereas, a Hawkeye isn't. So,
go back to the numbers that you said, 1,537 yards, 21 touchdowns. And he did that with an offense that was like 130th in the nation, a fairly low ranked offense. Kaleb Johnson was essentially Iowa's offense, is the way that reads to me. So I can't complain about the pick at all. I think he's a guy that's got a lot of potential. He's got a lot of upside. He runs a little high, but he's a tough guy. He's big. He's strong. And hey. Well, I think he'll be maybe a little more elusive than Najee was. Maybe has a little more speed than Najee did. Maybe is just as tough as Najee was. We'll have to wait and see about that.
That was one of the comments, I think, on NFL Network. He got Charles Davis, who he belted out a Bruno Sammartino line earlier when you had Seth Rollins from WWE do the Bears pick. And I was rolling about that. I'm like, no, okay, in one calendar year, we have Charles Davis talking about the Eagles and then talking about Bruno Sammartino. So I thought that was funny. But between Rich Eisen's kind of just leading, the show there. So but he's got his own opinion. But it was him or Jeremiah that was talking about a 4.57 speed and said that Johnson does not play to that speed, which some would consider slow. You can't Najee was pretty much plodding around as it was. Najee was good at protecting the football, and when it came to yards after contact as well. So this is, I like the fit here. This will be good for the offense, whoever ends up playing as the quarterback. You're going to have at least 2, if not 3 running back options. Who knows if they still don't add somebody in free agency? They'd have to find out where they fit in, but you still got, like J.K. Dobbins or, Nick Chubb, guys that have had some serious injury history that are still sitting out there as free agents. And there's a few others also, but we'll be talking about the rest of the pick of the litter here. But that's another topic for another time. Of course, we're talking right now, just Steelers, they stay put. 1 pick, day 2, Kaleb Johnson. Should be a good zone run scheme fit for Arthur Smith. What did they do on day 3? You got to expect a quarterback, and with Shadeur Sanders sliding completely out of this thing, it kind of reminds me, even Dak Prescott went in the 4th round, but that was like maybe there was some buzz. Somebody put the bug in her ear, like the one guy that was, the lineman from Lyle Collins that went to the Cowboys. And, he went completely undrafted because there's these things that leak and try to deter other teams from making these picks. So, it's pretty crazy, man, to see how many quarterbacks have already gone. And everybody, what was that thing you had from Colin Cowherd? Do you still have that up by any chance?
Yeah. In January, Colin Cowherd says, I would trade TJ Watt, George Pickens, and 2 first-rounders for the opportunity to move up and go get Shadeur Sanders if you think he's a starting quarterback. This is more proof that Colin Cowherd is just dumb. He's just dumb. He's consistently dumb. His takes are dumb. And the commercials, his stupid advertisements that say, oh, well, you're always mad at me when I'm right. I'm never mad at you because you're never right. You're worse than Filippone.
Oh, man. Filippone, at least he's just a local guy, though. You know what I mean? That begs the question, though, Brian. You get around here to the fourth round, and the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the clock. Which number is this coming up here? 123. Sanders is still out there. You kick the tires?
I got no arguments at this point.
Yeah,
look,
me neither.
Here's the thing. Any of the quarterbacks you're going to take in the 4th round, which is from the get-go when I said I'm okay with you drafting a quarterback. 4th round. Why? Because I didn't think there were any great quarterbacks in this draft to begin with. And if you're going to draft somebody to become your next Mason Rudolph, 4th round is a pretty good place to start doing that. Do I think Shadeur Sanders is the best option still available? I don't know if I think that. But would I have a problem if the Steelers decided that's where they're going to go in the 4th round? Nope. At this point, I'm like, you do what you want. I don't care. Because, Omar calls me all the time. He wants to check in on these things. He's like, look, we know you're always right. So tell us what to do. So, that's why they did what they did.
Yeah, most of the pre-draft visitors have been exhausted from this list unless they double dip at defensive line, for example, or I think
Which
Josh.
I'm in favor of, by the way.
Yeah, I think Josh Farmer from Florida State still hanging around there. Yahya Black from Iowa, I don't believe was picked anywhere. Trying to see what other names might still be among the pre-draft visitors. There was Jared Harrison Hunt from SMU. So these are some names to maybe look for as far as the visitors, and they need help on that defensive line. JJ Pegues from Ole Miss, Elijah Roberts, another guy. It was pegged as kind of like an edge rusher, but that would be in a 4-3 defensive end. I think he would play pretty much the same kind of role of like a Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton, 3-4 defensive tackle. He's more of that kind of mold. He might have to put just a little extra size on him, but he's pretty much there already. I'm trying to see. That about does it. A lot of the other positions, they're not even going to get into some of these wide receivers, the guys that they brought in, like Jaden Higgins or Savion Williams. They're already gone as well. I don't think they double dip at running back, even though I said that would be fun. But they don't need to. So it's going to be a quarterback. And if it's 4th round, Shadeur Sanders, I don't have a problem for a guy who completed 74% of his passes, 4,134 yards, 37 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, and getting that player in the 4th round. I think a lot that's going against him too is, just the 2 years at Colorado, and then he was at like Jackson State or whatever too. So I think some of it is, would he have played somewhere else? Would he have done some of these other things if he didn't have Travis Hunter? If his father wasn't the head coach? And I think he's got, and trust me, I'm sure Dion has a lot to do with this too, right? Maybe rub some people the wrong way. And some people are just like, nope, I'm not going to touch that with a 40-foot stick. So, but we know Mike Tomlin. When we know Mike Tomlin can keep some egos in check. And boy, I joked about it yesterday or earlier today. If they ended up with Aaron Rodgers and Shadeur Sanders in the same quarterback room, look out. George Pickens, DK Metcalf, that's going to be some fun times. Or it's going to be not so fun to watch, watching it burn down from, it's the house on fire. This is fine. So, but Brian, that'll do it for us.
Keep Hard Knocks away from that completely, please.
You need the sarcasm side somewhere.
Cool. I do.
That's not sarcasm for the Hard Knocks, but
please, Hard Knocks, call immediately and sign us up.
All right, my friend, putting in the man hours. We've got one more day of the draft, but we'll come back around and talk about all the picks and all the happenings here on probably earlier next week, maybe Monday. And we'll see what happens. We'll see when we get back on and reconvene. Thank you once again for joining me, my friend. Join Steelers Nation. One more day in the books, and then it becomes a very dead news period. But stick around with us as you get our thoughts on the full Steelers draft class. As Omar Khan has some more Khan artistry up his sleeve, we will find out. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Till next time, my name's Joe. His name is Brian, and we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.